Hello everyone, subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories. And don't forget to like this video and comment what you would do in this situation. Get ready for a story that will hook you from the first second. The price of a legacy. Imagine leaving the love of your life due to family pressure, only for the truth to return 5 years later in the most impactful way. 5 years ago, a millionaire CEO, pressured by his elitist parents, broke up with the love of his life. 5 years later, she reappeared with 2 little boys who were his spitting image. Ethan Sterling was a man the world admired. At 32, he was the CEO of Sterling Innovations, a multi-billion-dollar tech empire built on AI and cloud computing. He graced magazine covers, gave speeches at world summits, and shook hands with presidents. Every picture of him showed the same impeccable image. Perfectly styled golden blonde hair, penetrating blue eyes that showed the right amount of detachment, and a smile that could close deals before a contract was even read. He lived in a penthouse over Central Park. He drove a custom electric sports car and wore bespoke suits worth more than most people's rent. To anyone watching from the outside, he was flawless, disciplined, and destined for greatness. But there was one thing Ethan didn't have, and for which he once nearly risked everything: love. 5 years earlier, before assuming his role as CEO, Ethan had been with someone who didn't fit the plan his family had set for his life. Her name was Audrey Hayes. She wasn't a socialite or a tech investor. She hadn't been born into wealth. She was an architecture student, paying for her degree with scholarships and part-time jobs, with paint smudges on her jeans and notebooks full of messy sketches. She had long brown hair, expressive blue eyes, and a way of looking at Ethan that made him feel like he was more than his title. With her, he didn't have to perform. With her, he laughed harder, slept better, and dreamed more freely. When his parents found out about Audrey, the reaction was immediate and brutal. His father, Mr. Sterling, the chairman of the board, called him to his office. "She is not your equal. She dilutes your image. Marry her, and we will begin the process to remove you from the succession." His mother asked, "Do you really want to embarrass the family? What will the shareholders think when they see you with someone so average?" Ethan tried to resist, but Sterling Innovations wasn't just a company. It was a legacy. As the pressure mounted, Ethan felt the walls closing in. The worst part was he never told Audrey the truth. One day, he simply ended it, without explanation, without discussion. He said he needed to focus on his career and walked out of her apartment, leaving behind the woman he had imagined forever. Audrey called once, then twice. Then she stopped. He never answered. He buried himself in work, trying to convince himself it had been necessary. But not a single day passed when he didn't think of her. Still, he never reached out. Because admitting he was wrong would mean confronting everything he had given up. And at that moment, Ethan Sterling didn't know how to face regret. Not yet. Interactive. Question: at this point in the story, what do you think of Ethan's decision? Do you think he had another choice? Comment your opinion below. I'd love to read it. The Unseen Life of Audrey. Hayes never believed in fairy tales, but falling in love with Ethan Sterling had felt dangerously close to one. For a brief time, it had been more than she ever dreamed of. But one day, he was gone. Without explanation. Just a cold, carefully worded text saying he needed space to focus on his future. The silence that followed was deliberate. It was definitive. And so she stopped waiting. Audrey dove into her work, pouring her broken heart into blueprints and deadlines. But only weeks later, she began to feel the changes in her body. Fatigue, nausea, a missed period. When she took a pregnancy test and saw the result, her breath caught. It was positive. The ultrasound revealed something she hadn't expected. 2 heartbeats. Twins. 2 lives growing inside her. 2 reminders of a man who had walked away without looking back. She considered calling him again, but she remembered the cold silence, the way he had vanished as if she meant nothing, and she realized she couldn't go through that again. So she didn't call. She didn't write. She deleted his number. Deep down, she accepted he wasn't coming back. Audrey decided to leave the city. She took a job in a smaller city at an architecture firm where no one asked questions about her past. She rented a modest apartment and lived carefully, saving every cent. The twin pregnancy was difficult, but she was tougher. She worked despite swollen feet and sleepless nights, taking prenatal vitamins with food stamps and skipping meals to pay for baby clothes. When the time came, she gave birth to 2 healthy, beautiful boys, Liam and Oliver. They had blonde hair from the start and the bluest eyes she had ever seen. It was like looking at 2 small versions of the man she had once loved. At first, it broke her heart to see Ethan on their faces. But over time, that feeling softened into something else, something fierce. Not for what might have been, but for what was. Her sons were everything. Interactive. Question: do you think Audrey did the right thing by not telling Ethan about the twins? Would you have done the same or tried to contact him again? The impossible encounter. The invitation arrived unexpectedly, tucked into Audrey's modest email inbox with a generic subject line. Architectural Futures Forum. Speaker selection. The message was real. They had reviewed her design proposal for a low-cost, sustainable, community-focused women's shelter, and they wanted her to speak on the panel. It was unpaid, but travel and accommodation were covered. It was the opportunity she had dreamed of for years, the kind of recognition she never thought she'd receive as a single mother struggling in the background. She hesitated only a moment. Then she said yes. Returning to the city after 5 years felt surreal. She arrived with Liam and Oliver, 2 energetic 5-year-olds who asked non-stop questions on the flight, gasped at the skyline, and said the buildings looked like giant Lego towers. She dressed them carefully for the forum, packing a bag full of coloring books and snacks to keep them busy while she presented. She had no one to watch them, and she wasn't going to let that stop her. They sat patiently near the back of the exhibit space, while she stood beside her shelter model, her palms slightly sweaty, her heart racing. The event was held in a downtown skyscraper, with glass walls and sunlight pouring in. She tried not to think about the possibility of running into anyone she knew. The city was big. He wouldn't be here. Then she heard his voice. She was mid-answer to a journalist's question when the voice, low, confident, and too familiar to ignore, cut through the air. She froze. Her stomach flipped before her eyes confirmed it. Ethan Sterling was less than 20 feet away, laughing softly with a group of smartly suited sponsors. He hadn't changed. The blonde hair still immaculate, the posture as commanding as ever, but now older, harder around the edges. His expression was calm until it landed on her. Audrey saw the moment he realized. First confusion, then shock, then something deeper. His eyes darted past her to the 2 little boys sitting quietly on the carpet behind her table, coloring. Time slowed down. Ethan's face went pale, his gaze fixed on the twins, and Audrey could see the gears turning, fast and desperate. She did not move, did not smile, did not look away. He walked toward her. She stood rigid, gripping the edge of the display table. The world shrank to this impossible moment. He stopped in front of her, his voice barely audible. "Audrey," she did not answer. He looked back at the children, then at her, visibly shaken. "Are they?" "Yes," she said, calmly and quietly. "They're yours." He recoiled. stunned. For a moment, he looked like someone who had just been punched. "I didn't know," he said. "I had no idea." "I know," she replied, her voice steady. "I tried. You made sure I couldn't reach you." He blinked, trying to process it all. "But why didn't you try again?" Audrey laughed softly, bitterly and tiredly. "I did. I left messages. I sent letters. Your assistant told me never to call again. I assumed you had made your decision." Ethan looked down, the weight of understanding settling heavily on his face. He looked back at the children, who were still unaware of who he was. Liam looked up, smiled, and waved innocently. "I need to talk to you," Ethan said, his voice slightly broken. Audrey crossed her arms. "Now you want to talk, after 5 years, at a public event?" He hesitated, then slowly nodded. "Yes." "I need to explain, and I need to understand." She stared at him for a long time. The pain she had buried deep inside surfaced, but she wouldn't let him see it. "Not here, not yet. You don't get to walk back into this like nothing happened," she said. "But if you truly want to understand, start by learning their names." Ethan looked at her, and something broke in his eyes. He turned to the children, knelt, and asked them gently, "What are your names?" The twins looked up, puzzled, but curious. "I'm Liam," one said. "I'm Oliver," added the other. "What's yours?" Ethan smiled sadly. "I'm Ethan." They didn't recognize him. Why would they? Audrey watched from behind the table, her heart pounding. This was not the moment she had prepared for. And yet, here they were. Not as strangers. Not yet as a family. But something had begun to change. The truth had finally come out, and nothing would ever be the same. Like this video if you think they deserve a second chance, and don't forget to subscribe for the continuation. The Long Walk to Redemption. Ethan didn't sleep that night. The image of the two boys haunted him. Liam and Oliver. Their names resonated in his thoughts. He still could see their eyes, so familiar it ached, and the way they had looked at him without recognition. He secretly arranged a private DNA test, which confirmed it 3 days later. 99% match. They were his sons. He contacted Audrey through the event coordinator. She agreed to meet him once, at a small cafe in a quiet neighborhood. No lawyers, no assistants, just them. "I have the results," Ethan said finally. "They're mine." Audrey nodded. "I know. I don't know what to tell you," he stammered. "Then don't say anything you don't mean." "I mean everything now," he said. "I wanted to fight for you. I was going to. But my parents, the board, everything crashed down. I didn't know how to be the man they expected, and the man you needed. You chose them," she said, without malice. "You walked away." "I did, and I had to raise them without you," she continued. "While you built empires, I built cribs. While you gave speeches, I tried to scrape enough together for dinner." Ethan winced. Her words were not cruel. They were only true, and they hit harder than he could have anticipated. "I don't ask for forgiveness," he said. "Not yet. I just want a chance to know them, to be a part of their lives, even if it's only in a small way. Even if I'm just—" He paused, his voice catching. "I can't come back, Audrey, but I can show up now. I can try." Audrey studied him. "They're 5 years old. They don't understand betrayal or loyalty, but they understand presence. You can't just walk in and out. You can't start and stop. If you want to be in their lives, it has to be to the end." "I will be," he said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." Audrey nodded, still cautious. "Then you'll start small. Pick them up from school one day. Come to the park. Sit with them. Let them come to you. If they ask questions, answer them honestly. If they run away from you, don't chase them. Just be there." Ethan nodded with humility. "I can do that." As they left the cafe, they didn't part with hugs or promises, just an understanding, a fragile agreement between two people who were no longer in love, but who were forever connected. Audrey walked ahead, and Ethan followed at a respectful distance. Not as a couple, not yet as a father, but as a man finally trying to fix what had once gone so terribly wrong. Interactive question. How difficult do you think it was for Audrey to accept this proposal from Ethan? And what do you think Ethan will do now? The father who returned Ethan's first visit to the school was nothing like the corporate events he was used to. He was awkward and unsure. Audrey had carefully set it up. She told the boys a friend would pick them up and take them to the park. No labels, no explanations, just a chance for them to meet him on neutral ground. When Liam and Oliver rushed out of the school doors, Ethan recognized them instantly. He knelt down. "Hi, I'm Ethan. Your mom asked me to take you to the park today. Sound good?" The boys looked at each other, then at him. Liam tilted his head. "Are you the man from the building with all the people in suits?" Ethan smiled. "Yes, that was me. Do you have snacks?" Oliver squinted. "Yes, la." That was enough. They took his hands without hesitation and led him away, chatting about dinosaurs and spaceships. Ethan listened to everything, absorbing their absolute, unfiltered joy. In the park, Oliver fell off the slide and bumped his elbow. He didn't cry immediately. He just stood still, eyes wide. Ethan rushed over, checking his arm. "Are you okay? It's just a bump." Oliver paused, then looked up. "You look like Mom. I'm trying to be good at this," Ethan said softly. Liam, watching nearby, finally stepped closer. "Are you coming back?" Ethan looked him in the eyes firmly. "Yes, I will be back." Liam nodded, satisfied. He ran off again, calling for Oliver. Ethan stayed there, catching his breath. That single question, "Are you coming back?" had felt heavier than any contract he had ever signed. But his answer had been sincere. He would be back. Every time. The visits continued, silently and steadily. Ethan showed up for school pickup, at the park, at playdates. He learned which juices they hated and what superhero was currently in fashion. He learned to kneel down and truly listen, to put his phone away, to simply be there. One afternoon, Oliver took his hand without prompting. Liam did the same. Then, Liam looked up and asked, "Why do you always smile when we talk?" Ethan looked at them both, their cheeks flushed from running. "Because I'm lucky," he said simply. "I get to be here with you." Audrey watched from the doorway after each visit, trying to gauge if he had earned another. This time, she saw the boys run inside, laughing. Then she looked at him. "You didn't leave today," she said quietly. "You stayed even when Oliver got scared." Ethan nodded. "I told them I would." Audrey looked down, then up at him. "Keep doing that." And just like that, the wall between them was lowered. It wasn't gone, but it was thinner. And Ethan knew this wasn't about being forgiven in a single moment. It was about showing up in hundreds of them. And he would. Every time. The word that changed everything. It had been almost 3 months since Ethan started seeing Liam and Oliver regularly. He never missed a visit. He was never late. He had accepted that. For now, he was just Ethan, the man who brought good snacks and laughed at their jokes. One Saturday afternoon, Audrey had a design-in interview, and she asked Ethan to watch the boys at his apartment, which he had recently kid-proofed. That afternoon, they built an elaborate pillow fort. Ethan played along as Commander Dad, a name Oliver invented mid-game. Ethan froze for a second, caught off guard by the word. He didn't react immediately, afraid that if he did, Oliver would take it back. So he just smiled and played along. But inside, he was a mess of emotions. Later that night, as they lay under the pillow fort watching cartoons, Oliver snuggled up next to him. "Can I call you Dad now, or do I have to wait?" Ethan felt his throat tighten. He looked at Oliver's small, serious face, then at Liam, who was also watching, silently holding his favorite dinosaur. "You can call me whatever feels right," he said, his voice husky. "But if you want to call me Dad, I would be very proud of that." Oliver nodded. Liam gave him a small smile, the kind that says more than words. That night, Audrey came to pick them up. She found them asleep on the sofa, Oliver lying on Ethan's chest, Liam curled up beside him. She stood there for a long moment, just watching. Something inside her, something that had been locked away, began to shift. She saw how safe they looked. When she finally woke him, Ethan whispered, "I'm sorry. We must have all fallen asleep." Audrey shook her head. They were happy. That's what matters. As he gently lifted the boys to take them to the car, he looked at her. "Oliver called me Dad today," he said quietly. He asked if it was okay. Audrey didn't speak immediately. Then she looked at him and said, "He wouldn't have asked if he hadn't already meant it." The journey home was quiet. Ethan rode in the back seat with the boys, holding their hands as they slept. Audrey looked through the rearview mirror, and something inside her settled for the first time in a long time. The walls she had built to protect herself, understandable and necessary walls, began to come down. Comment below if you think the story will have a happy ending. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. The final showdown and the rebuilding. Ethan knew the moment had come to face his parents. He had avoided it for months, but the silence now felt like surrender. He needed them to see what they had done, and more importantly, what he would never allow them to do again. He arrived at the Sterling estate on a Sunday morning. It was exactly as he remembered, impeccably landscaped, cold and quiet. His father greeted him in the library. His mother appeared moments later, as immaculate as ever. "I'm surprised you came," his father said. "We need to talk," Ethan said, standing tall. "About Audrey, about the boys." His mother stiffened. "We warned you about her years ago." "You didn't warn me," Ethan countered, his voice sharp but controlled. "You lied. You blocked letters. You told people to keep her away from me." "We did what was necessary to protect your future," his father countered. "You were emotional, You would have thrown away your entire legacy for a girl who had nothing." Ethan took a deep breath, fury rising in his chest. "That girl is the mother of my children, the children you never cared to know existed. She raised them alone, with nothing, and they turned out better than anything this family has ever produced." "My success," Ethan interrupted, "no longer has anything to do with this name. The money, the image, none of it matters if it costs me my humanity. You tried to make me choose between love and legacy, and I listened. I walked away from the only real thing I had, but I will not make that mistake again." His father leaned back, his tone now cold, strategic. "And now what? Are you going to play house with a woman and pretend you're a family man?" Ethan looked at him, disgusted. "I don't care what the world swallows. I care what Liam and Oliver see when they look at me. I care what kind of man I am when I tuck them in at night. And I care about the woman who carried that weight when I left." His mother opened her mouth, but he cut her off. "I am not here to ask for your blessing. I am here to tell you that your control ends here. If you cannot accept my family, you will not be a part of our lives. That is your choice. But I am done living under your version of success." He turned and walked out, leaving them in their perfect, empty house. When he returned to his apartment, Audrey and the boys were waiting. "Did you tell them?" she asked. He nodded. "Everything." "And?" "They didn't take it well." Audrey stepped closer. "Do you regret it?" Ethan looked at his sons, who were building block towers on the floor. "Not for a second," he said. That night, after the boys were in bed, Audrey handed him a small box. Inside was a framed photograph she had taken weeks ago. Ethan sitting on the park lawn, Oliver in his lap, Liam leaning beside him, all three laughing wildly. It was a silent gesture, a thank you, a beginning, the final anchor. It had been almost a year since Ethan found out about Liam and Oliver. His apartment was long transformed into a warm, lived-in home. He chose to show up again and again, not as the perfect man, but as the present one. He and Audrey had rebuilt trust, not through dramatic apologies, but through the quiet rhythm of shared responsibility. He respected her more than ever. She had every reason to lock him out forever, but she didn't. And that forgiveness, unspoken but felt, was the greatest gift he was ever given. One Saturday morning, as the boys played, and Audrey made coffee, Ethan stood by the window with a small box in his hand. It was simple, clean, and carefully chosen. Inside was a ring, delicate, yet strong. He had realized their story wasn't about fireworks. It was about truth. He took her hand and led her to the living room. The boys looked up, curious. Ethan knelt. "I don't want to rewrite the past," he said. "I just want to write the rest of the story with you in it. As your partner, as the father of our children, as the man who finally understands what it means to love completely and to show up completely." Audrey smiled, wide and true, and nodded. "Yes," she said simply, "because I don't need perfection. I only need you." The children cheered, instinctively feeling it was a good thing, and piled onto his arms, sending them all tumbling onto the rug in a heap of laughter. The wedding was small, held in the community garden Audrey had helped design years ago. There were no speeches about fate, only vows spoken from the heart, promises to choose each other, to raise their boys together, to own their mistakes, and to hold each other accountable. When they kissed, it wasn't the kind of kiss that marked a beginning. It was the kind that sealed something already built, slowly, painfully, and beautifully. And standing there, with the love of his life by his side, and his sons chasing butterflies, Ethan finally understood what success truly meant. He was home. Completely, and this time, he wasn't going anywhere. The story of Audrey and Ethan is subtly powerful. It is not based on an exaggerated redemption or a fairy tale perfection, but celebrates the slow human work of rebuilding. The transformation of Ethan is earned step by step through presence, humility, and the willingness to face what he once ran from. Audrey's strength is the story's emotional backbone. She never needed to be saved. She needed respect, consistency, and truth. And in the end, she got it all. Don't forget to comment if you liked this story, and subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. Thanks for watching. The Past Knocks, the Unseen Consequence. Like this chapter, if you think the past should stay buried, subscribe for the inevitable drama. Life had settled into a rhythm of imperfect perfection for Ethan and Audrey. Their wedding, small and deeply meaningful, was followed by a year of building trust, building their careers, and building a backyard fort that threatened to violate Manhattan zoning laws. Liam and Oliver, now 6, thrived under the consistent presence of their father. Ethan, no longer the CEO chasing quarterly profits, was simply Dad, a title he cherished more than any boardroom appointment. However, the peace was fragile. Ethan had cut ties with his parents after their confrontation, but the sterling name was a shadow that didn't easily fade: the return of the architect. Audrey, meanwhile, was flourishing. Her architectural firm, Phoenix Architectural Group, was gaining recognition. One Monday, her assistant forwarded a large, unsolicited design proposal. The project was for a massive, sustainable redevelopment of a former industrial waterfront. Exactly the kind of high-profile, socially responsible design Audrey lived for. The lead architect's name was familiar: Victoria Hayes. Audrey froze. Hayes? The name meant nothing, but the memory of the woman sitting beside Ethan in that cafe 5 years ago, the one who caused him to utter the cold phrase, "You saw wrong," flashed into her mind. That woman, Victoria, was a reminder of the chasm of pain she had crossed. She showed the file to Ethan that night. "She's an architect?" Audrey asked, her voice calm, but her eyes guarded. Ethan paled slightly as he read the name. Victoria was involved in a few sterling innovations projects. Professional only, I promise. Her firm specializes in urban renewal. She's high profile, well-connected. He met Audrey's gaze, searching for doubt. "It's a huge opportunity for Phoenix, Audrey. Is it a risk? If she tries anything unprofessional, I'll shut her down." Audrey accepted the project. She was a professional, and she wouldn't let a ghost of the past sabotage her future. But the tension in their apartment was palpable. The uninvited guest, 2 weeks later, Victoria requested a site visit at the Phoenix office. When she walked in, the air chilled. She was still effortlessly beautiful, wearing a severe white suit that screamed power. She ignored Audrey's extended hand, addressing Ethan, who was there for a meeting instead. "Ethan, I knew you'd be here," Victoria said, her tone possessive, yet cool. "You always were drawn to the biggest projects." She then glanced at Audrey. "Mrs. Sterling, I admire your work on the low-income housing model. Very sweet." The word sweet was a subtle poison. "Thank you, Victoria," Audrey replied, meeting her stare evenly. "It's about building strong foundations, a concept I apply to all areas of my life." The professional skirmish ended quickly, but not before Victoria delivered a veiled warning. "I'm still very close with your mother, Ethan. She often tells me how much the Sterling family misses your consistency, and how much she dislikes being cut off from her grandchildren." That night, Ethan found his car window smashed, and a small note on his driver's seat. It wasn't signed, but the expensive ivory paper was distinctively his mother's. "You chose the low road. We will remind you what you lost." The business challenge was officially activated. The unthinkable truth, the true crisis, arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Victoria called Audrey directly, her voice strained. "Mrs. Sterling, I need to speak with Ethan immediately. It's about a mutual acquaintance." Audrey handed the phone to Ethan, watching him with mounting dread. Ethan listened, his face draining of color with every word. "She's fine now, Victoria, but why did you call me?" Ethan asked, his voice shaking. He covered the receiver and looked at Audrey. "She's at the hospital." After hanging up, Ethan paced, rubbing his temples. 5 years ago, after I broke up with you, I was reckless. I dated Victoria briefly. It ended quickly." He stopped, his blue eyes wide with panic. She says she had a daughter 9 months later, a little girl named Hope." Audrey felt the blood drain from her face. 9 months later. The same timeline as the twins. She says Hope was admitted to NYU Langone this morning with a rare blood disorder. Victoria needs a donor, and she called me. She thinks I might be the father. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument they had ever had. Audrey looked at her 2 boys, Liam and Oliver, sitting quietly on the rug, then back at Ethan. The possibility of a 4th child, a half-sibling to the twins, raised by the woman who represented the past he had rejected, was a cruel twist of fate. "What if she is?" Audrey whispered. "I have to know," Ethan replied, his voice barely a breath. "For the child's sake, and for ours." Ike's, the new truth, the price of consistency. Comment: how should Audrey and Ethan handle the possibility of a 3rd child with Victoria? Should Audrey support him? Subscribe to see the final decision. The next 2 weeks were agonizing. Ethan was tested, the results sealed. He spent hours at the hospital, not with Victoria, but watching Hope. She was small, frail, and had striking blonde hair and serious, quiet blue eyes. His eyes. Audrey drove to the hospital one afternoon. She found Ethan sitting alone in the hallway. "The results are in," he said, handing her a sealed envelope. "I haven't opened it." "Why?" "Because if she's mine, the complications are endless. If she's not, I still have to figure out how to live with the knowledge that I was so careless, so weak, so quickly after losing you." He looked at her, his love raw and absolute. "Either way, I almost lost us again. I never want to put you through this." Audrey took a deep breath. She wasn't just fighting Victoria or his past. She was fighting the sterling legacy of emotional abandonment. She tore open the envelope. The result? Hope was not Ethan's biological daughter. A wave of relief washed over them, but the emotional scars remained. Ethan still had to figure out how to help a little girl he had become attached to, and how to deal with Victoria. The final bargain, Victoria approached Ethan the next day. She didn't press the paternity issue, simply asking him to use his resources to find the best treatment options, citing his connections to Sterling Innovations. Audrey stepped in. She met Victoria alone, not as a romantic rival, but as a professional and a mother. "You brought this proposal to Phoenix to get to Ethan," Audrey stated. "That ends now. He's the only one with the influence to save my daughter," Victoria snapped. "He will help, but on my terms," Audrey said firmly. "He will use his resources, but only through a Sterling Innovations Foundation grant, directed by an independent panel. He will not act alone, and you will never use our family again." Victoria, broken by fear for her daughter, agreed. The Sterling family's attempt to regain control through emotional blackmail failed. Ethan used his connections to secure a cutting-edge treatment for Hope, saving the little girl's life. The full circle, 6 months later, Phoenix Architectural Group won the waterfront project. Audrey accepted the award on behalf of her firm, giving a speech that wasn't about buildings, but about the foundations of life. Ethan, sitting in the front row with Liam and Oliver, felt his chest swell with pride. He was no longer the CEO of Sterling Innovations, having resigned to focus on philanthropy and family, much to his parents' lasting disgust. That night, as he and Audrey lay in bed, he took her hand. "I almost destroyed everything again," he whispered. "I let my shame lead me to make careless choices that almost resulted in another child being brought into chaos." "But you didn't," Audrey replied, turning toward him, her blue eyes shining with profound love. "You came back, and when the past knocked, you chose to face it, not run from it. You chose consistency. We built something real, Audrey. Not a legacy, but a life that is entirely ours," she confirmed, pressing a kiss to his hand. The Sterling name would always carry weight, but now it carried a new, far more valuable legacy. The legacy of choice, redemption, and a love that survived the steepest price. Final question. What do you think the best lesson of this story is? The power of forgiveness or the necessity of choice? Comment your thought below. Don't forget to like this final chapter, share it, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of love and redemption. A year had passed since the last great challenge. The Sterling name, once synonymous with cold corporate power, was now being redefined in quiet ways. Ethan, now wearing comfortable sweaters instead of bespoke suits, found his true fulfillment not in the boardroom, but in his home. He devoted his time to a newly formed nonprofit, the Sterling Family Foundation, focusing on education and sustainable community development, funding projects like the very women's shelter design Audrey had proposed years ago. The new boardroom, Audrey's firm, Phoenix Architectural Group, won the massive waterfront project they had secured despite Victoria's interference. Her design, centered on community spaces, green roofs, and affordable, beautiful housing, was a national sensation. She had become a titan, but one driven by empathy. She and Ethan worked together seamlessly, their collaboration built on mutual respect and shared values, a true partnership that mirrored their personal life. Shutterstock. One evening, while reviewing plans, Liam and Oliver, now 7, wandered into the home office. "Dad," Liam asked, holding a crayon drawing of a lopsided house, "why did you quit being the big boss of your old building?" Ethan knelt, taking the drawing. "That building was very important to me once, buddy. But I realized that being the big boss of a company isn't the most important job. My most important job is being the boss of my own life and making sure the important things, like you two and Mommy, are always the priority." "So you're like a community boss now?" Oliver asked, always keen on labels. "Exactly," Audrey smiled. "He helps build better communities, just like we build better homes." The legacy of choice, the greatest transformation, was evident in the boys. They carried the Sterling name, but their values were shaped by the stability and honesty of their new life. They were kind, resilient, and knew the meaning of showing up. One afternoon, the boys came home upset. A classmate had made a rude comment about their rich dad. "He said we're only special because our name is on a big building," Liam confessed, tears in his eyes. Ethan sat them down. He didn't deny the wealth, but he reframed the legacy. He brought out a small, worn box containing the gold chain necklace, the one Audrey wore daily, and the old, discarded business card from 5 years ago. "This card," Ethan explained, pointing to his name, "represents the man who almost made a huge mistake, the man who chose money and a building over his heart. That man was weak." He then picked up the delicate necklace. "This was my mother's. It's beautiful, but it's just a thing. The real strength," he said, turning to Audrey, "is the courage your mommy had to walk away and build a life from nothing. And the strength I found in choosing to be here every single day, to earn your love back." "The Sterling legacy isn't those buildings anymore," Audrey added softly. "It's the choice to be honest. It's the choice to be kind. It's the choice to be present." The boys understood. They were not defined by the money their last name held. They were defined by the love their home gave. The final vow. One evening, Ethan and Audrey returned to the small cafe where their story had fractured years ago. It was quiet, smelling of rain and fresh coffee. They sat at the same window booth. "I still think about that day," Audrey admitted, swirling her tea. "The moment you said, 'You saw wrong,' it was the end of my world. And the beginning of mine," Ethan whispered. "My world ended the day I let you walk out that door. I was too arrogant to admit you were right, too cowardly to face my parents." He reached across the table, taking her hands. "I learned the hard way that the biggest lie I ever told was to myself. And the greatest achievement of my life wasn't Sterling Innovations. It was surviving 4 years to earn the right to sit here with you now." Audrey smiled, her eyes glistening. "We don't need a legacy built on buildings, Ethan. We have one built on trust and second chances." "A legacy of love," he confirmed. They kissed, not with the feverish passion of youth, but with the deep, settled assurance of two people who had fought for their future, brick by slow brick. They walked out into the cool evening air, no longer a powerhouse CEO and a wronged woman, but partners, stronger than ever, heading home to the two sons who gave their lives its truest meaning. Final meaningful question. Do you think the emotional cost of the 4 years apart was ultimately worth the profound strength and genuine legacy Ethan and Audrey were able to build? Comment below. This is the final chapter of their extraordinary story. Thank you for following Audrey and Ethan's journey of redemption and love. Like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories.